G'day and welcome to another big edition of the RDFNL Football Show. My name's Yeendy. I'm joined by Tara Murray from the Star Weekly. We are just days away, well, just over a week away from the season starting. Are you pumped?
I am. I've missed footy season. I was going to say, cricket and bowls is good for a while, but you get to that point, you just need football back to fill your weekends.
Yep, absolutely. It'll come roaring through beautifully, and we've got some big games sort of coming up, but we'll touch on that next week. But we're just going to go through some of the teams at the moment. Broadford, how are they shaping up under Skip Bray? I know their Facebook has been littered with some great signings of young players signing up for 2018. I think
last year Broadford was about surviving.
Yeah. And
they managed to do that under James Philpott. Did a really good job. I know he won't be there this year, but they survived. They didn't get a lot of results, but they got players coming through. A lot of 19s got experience in the senior side. For now, it's to build on that. And obviously, you've got Skip Bray, who took the side to a couple of preliminary finals. So you've got an experienced coach who's been at this club before. Now it's to continue and build on the hard work they've done the last 12 months on and off the field.
And they've got a good hard edge about them as well when they do play. They've got some young kids coming through that are really good, that will have a very bright future at the club. And who knows where their season will unfold, but no doubt we'll be watching with great interest and just seeing how some of these players develop. And Skip's a very good coach in his own right, as you highlighted.
I think they'll be looking for a few wins just to give that confidence to this group. It's hard when you're not winning a lot of matches, so get a few wins, sort of maybe climb up the ladder a little bit, and continue to build for what should be a strong side in years to come.
Looking very positive so far down at Harley Hammond Reserves. We turn our attention to Diggers Rest. I've spent a bit of time around there lately, just enjoying the nice serenity over there. And look, they're tracking pretty nicely under Jamie Lobb.
You mentioned that Jamie's taken over the coaching role. So Sean Sims had done it for a number of years and had took them to the success they had been looking for. They finally got that premiership, but I think they were disappointed with how they ended last year.
Definitely.
They lost to Rupert's Wood, got knocked out in a preliminary final, and they weren't happy with that. So there's a lot of motivation to go better than that. They have added a bit more depth, especially in that midfield area. So I think one of the biggest signings in the whole entire competition for the off-season is Matthew Medcraft. I saw him dominate at Ballarat Football League level. He went up to North, dominated up there. He took out Sunbury Lions, best and fairest, a couple of years ago. So he's not only a midfielder, but he can kick goals, and I think that's another option for them up forward. They've also got Cole Laurie's back, Tom Evans is back, and they've added another form, a Sunbury Kangaroo in Jesse Flannery, who is another that adds to that midfield depth. So they've really reinforced the side they've got.
Exactly, and they haven't really lost too much either. I know the Kilty boys have moved on, but aside from that, their list is looking pretty cherry ripe and ready to go. And once good to see Taylor Hine. Once he sort of gets back on the track, he's been looking pretty good on the track in recent weeks as well. We'll watch him with great interest, and I think there's a few other guys that are with a bit of AFL experience that are still on the list as well, which is very positive for the club moving forward.
It is. I think they'll be up there again. They've been up there the last however many years, and I can't see them falling.
Lansfield, they're roaring with Chris Collins as coach, and certainly I think the key for them is just to build the club going forward. Not so much what happens on the senior footy field, but to do a bit more work behind the scenes.
It is. They've probably had the least stability as a club over the last 12 months. Obviously, they had Ash Manning leave early last year, and you've had Cam White take over the coaching reign. And look, it was tough at them for times. They lost players, they lost their full forward, but now they've got Chris Collins, a favourite son at this club. He coached the club a number of years ago when he was very young, and then they ended up going to a flag under Kevin Fitzgerald I think the year after he finished coaching. So, and he'll be back as a player as well. So you've got someone who is experienced and will help bring morale back to this club. And as you said, for them it's looking for stability and looking to build for the future.
Exactly right, and I don't think there's any concerns for the club in terms of what they can produce. I think there's a lot of positive signs, and with Chris back in the fold, it generally tends to bring a lot more people out and create a good vibe. I know when I personally heard the news that he was back, I could see that only positives going forward for that club, because he's a very well loved guy, not just at Lansfield but around the competition.
Exactly, and he's still been around Lansfield. He's been Lansfield's cricket captain for a number of years as well. So you've got some good guys around him, and hopefully they can build.
And speaking of building, Macedon will be looking to build on their momentum gathered from last year under the new coach Ben Tankard. They're shaping up for a very good season ahead.
It is. They've got a very similar lineup to last year. Obviously, they lost Jason Cook, which is going to be the hardest player for them to replace. And I spoke to Ben last week about that, and he said, look, we're not going to have a forward who is going to kick 80 goals in a season like Jason. They've also lost Aaron Christensen, so who's gone to the Sunbury Lions, and then they've lost a few of their older guys who have decided to retire. So in the end, there is 5 or 6 out of their premiership side, but they're looking to build within and give some of those younger guys an opportunity to step up. So I'm not expecting to see their best footy until later in the season because they had a late start to the pre-season. Obviously, it was a tough campaign the last couple of years. Ben's appointment was pretty late, so I'm expecting them to build as the season goes on.
I had a good look at them against Crichton in a practice match recently, and I'm pretty confident that they would have lost none of their touch. I think they're as hard edge as what they were in 2017, and I think they can only get better. So I'm really excited for what they can offer, and a good year ahead. And Melton Central's under Sprowley will be looking for another big year ahead in developing their players and moving forward.
It is, and I spoke to him not long ago, and Matt basically said, look, they may not have the number of wins they had last year. They were probably the most improved win-wise last season because they do have a tougher draw this year with clubs sort of sorting out whether you play each other twice one year, once the next. They probably do have a slightly tougher draw and they're aware of that, but they think they will be a better side. One area they did look to address was the forward area. So they've brought in Dylan Weir, who previously played under Sproul at Port Arlington. So that's one forward. And they've brought in Cooper Pepe, who was one of the best in Darley's reserves premiership as well. So they've brought in a couple up forward. They have lost a little bit of experience with Craig Harvey, Josh Banford and James McCaleb fall out, but I think it's just to continuing to develop. They've got a lot of players coming through that system, a lot of young players, and it's just giving them more experience and getting them up to the level of senior football.
I think for them the key to the Centrals is what will happen next year. So if they can have a really good year this year and start to build on the improvements, then I think next year will be a really exciting one.
I think so, and that's they're building, and that's it. And last year they probably surprised a lot of people with the amount of wins. If they can get that amount again, they'll be pretty happy. Yeah,
from all talks around the clubs, they would happily play some of the best teams in the competition to see where they're at, which is a good test for them. Riddle seem to be going from strength to strength in the off season from all the talk about their the new player, older players returning and good quality players too.
I was going to say Riddle's brought back locals.
Yeah.
With the exception of Dylan Tarkson, who does have family connections at Riddle, all the guys they've sort of brought back in have all got Riddle connections. You've got Paul Sailberg, a former Bowen medalist. You've got Peter Robertson, James Nolan, and apparently both Allen brothers look like they're going to pull their boots as well. So that adds a lot of experience, adds a bit of height as well.
Yep.
And you've got Dylan Tarkson, who can be an X-factor. He is coming off a shoulder injury, but he's played VFL, played TAC Cup, and played senior football at the Ballarat Football League. So you've brought all these guys back in, but the focus for them, as it has been the last 2 years, is the kids. They want to keep bringing these kids through and keep giving them opportunities. I think they had 20 players make their senior debut at the club last year, and it's about continuing to do that.
How do you think, sort of in the long run, how do you think Jamie Elliott will go and maybe getting that long-awaited RDFNL senior premiership?
Look, everyone I speak to really rates Riddle. Even though the results may not necessarily show it, everyone rates Riddle and what they're doing out there. And you get in an extra 12 months into these guys, they've got some guns out there. And you've got to be careful. On their day, Riddle can beat anyone.
How are Rockbank travelling?
Rockbank, they've got Lee McInerney is coaching by himself this year with Lee Sproul having two work commitments, meaning he couldn't. And it's about consolidating again. They wanted to get everything right off field and then build on field. So I think give them another couple of years, they're going to be down the bottom and they're aware of that. Their list, probably not too many changes, but it's just continuing to build on what they've done.
Yep, certainly, again, it is another club that is rebuilding, but rebuilding in a positive way. Romsey, they're generally keeping a little bit quiet at this time of year.
Virtually the same side as last year.
Yep.
There has been not many changes at all. I think they've had 2 outs and 2 ins.
Yep.
One out is former Bowen medalist Darren Goodwin has retired.
Yep.
But replacing him is his brother Matthew. He's
Yep.
come across from Macedon. He didn't play last year with injury, but his brother's come across to replace him. And they've got Ricky Wood back to the club, who played all his juniors at Romsey before playing WRFL the last few years. So for Romsey, it's about trying to close that gap between the top sides and them. They know they're a long way off. On their day, they can beat anyone, as we saw. They knocked off Diggers Rest and Rupert's Wood early in the season, but they were nowhere near Macedon and Riddle later in the season. So for them, it's trying to play that consistent football a bit more and closing the gap between them and the top sides.
I think the addition of Ricky Wood straight in that midfield is just going to be a very good, great excitement machine. He's got some good experience, and he was a past captain of the club at the under-18s level, a very good leader on the field. Rupert's Wood, change of coach in the off-season there. Nick Ash has taken on the reins there, but he was assistant coach last year to the club.
Look, obviously, that happened early in the year, but grand final day, Nick Ash had already been reappointed. not reappointed, had been appointed. All the players knew that was happening. So they were one of the early movers and probably one of the big movers. They signed their whole entire grand final side pretty quickly. They've maintained all of them. So everyone they've lost has sort of not been on that side or been outside of that. And then they've added players. So they've got a couple of former players. Early on they signed Kane Murphy and Darren McGovern. Mm-hmm. More recently, they've signed Dylan Murphy, who we haven't seen on the field the last few years, so it'll be interesting how he goes back. But another Bowen medalist has returned, so they can get him back on form. That's 3 good guys they've got, and then they've looked to add a bit of height. So they've got John Barnard and Lee Wellington, who both come to the club with EDFL Premier football experience, so that gives them. So they're one of the clubs who have made sure they've reinforced with what they've got. They want to go that one step further.
The Sunbury Kangaroos, new coach in the off-season, Anthony Layden comes across from the EDFL, some good experience there. I think one of the key talking points about him is that he hasn't had the best lineups to work with, but he's been able to get the best out of his players.
It is. I previously dealt with him at Tullamarine, and his first year at Tullamarine, I think they lost 40 players over the off-season, something like that, a big number, and he took them to a preliminary final, and the next year he took them to a grand final. So he's got experience with undermans. Ideally, he would have loved to have had a full-strength side, but the Sunbury Kangaroos have been hit with a number of outs. You've lost Ryan Pretty, Phil Lobb, Mitch Farmer, Dylan Wright, Kane Murphy, Darren McGovern, Chris Petrero. Yep. So you've lost all these guys. I think the biggest thing for Kangaroos, they've lost a lot of midfield depth, and they didn't have midfield depth to lose. When they struggled late last year, it was when they had Kane Murphy out injured, they had Ty Cuff out injured, they had Chris Petrero overseas. So you're missing these guys. Now you don't have them at all. So for them, it's about these younger guys stepping up. And you've got the reserve side who have come off a premiership as well. So there is some young guys of that who could possibly step up and fill those gaps. So you've got them guys stepping in.
Wallen just seem they'll be getting better with as the year gets on. I think this year they're no doubt disappointed they just narrowly missed the finals in 2017.
I think that was a shock. For all season they looked like a final side, and then at the last round they missed out. So they made got a lot of players in last season. They've added some more this season, so they're continuing to build. I expect them to play finals this year, especially after missing last year.
How about Wood and Hesketh, new coach as well in the off season?
This is one team I'm excited about. We talk about them every year. They look exciting. They get the players on, but then they get injuries and don't have the luck they needed. So obviously they've got Tom Carlin on board, and he came in pretty early, and I know they're really focused on their fitness and a little bit of injury prevention during the off season, because if they can try and stop the injuries happening before they do, that might have a big boost. And they've signed a number of players as well, so they've got a lot more midfield depth, and they've got arguably the best midfielder in the competition in Dan Toman, despite what the Bowen medal results said. I still rate him as one of the best, if not the best midfielder in the competition. And you've got Tom Wilson that comes across. Tom Carlin will play in the midfield. He can play a bit of a I've gone blank. He can play the role. Yep. So attacking role. That's what I was after. Yep. You've got Trent Lavari. He's come back to the club, and they've looked to add a little bit forward as well. Alistair Ray's another one as well. So you've got a number of players. They've looked to, if they can get players on the board, I expect them to have a big year.
Yeah, and I guess a few more eyes will be on Tommy Gawthorpe as well. I know he had a little bit of a hamstring injury during the pre-season, but I don't think that should phase them too much. No doubt they'll be they'll be right in the goal kicking department there. Their pre-season's been very positive with all their practice matches so far. It's looking very exciting. But we are very much looking forward to next week's big action as we get ready to launch into the season ahead. Tara, thanks so much for joining us on this edition, sort of overlooking how the teams are heading as we get ready for round 1 of the RDFNL season, which starts next week. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.